be quite a challenge, and I will try and ensure that either myself or Vice Chair spots hands going up. So if you see us trying to crank our way to look around to make sure we can see what everyone wants to ask a question. So welcome to the Peace and Crime panel meeting this afternoon. I'll start with the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of February. If anyone wishes to raise anything, could they raise their hand? There, Abraham.
Yeah, can I request that we have a summary of the actions arising out of these minutes and progress on them as a summary? I mean, quite often things are picked up throughout the agenda, but you only have to kind of pick them up once, and then there might be some things that have slipped through the net. So I've got one query on one of the actions arising, and that was around the CCTV contributions, because it's around money, funding. I'm quite keen to get a follow-up on that one. So the action was that Superintendent James Foley would be conducting a review of the current CCTV provision and would engage with partners to address areas of concern. So I don't believe we've had any communication with that respect, and I know it was a hot topic in Newark and Sherwood as well. So that's what I would like.
Okay. No problem. I'll do that as and when we come to it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I was sorry.
Thank you. So I asked, we agreed that we spread the word awareness of the position and the positive work that done across the organisation. I've been watching for something in the newspapers, but I've not seen anything yet. Is it going to happen? You know, the positive report of what the police are doing.
Sorry, can I just make an intervention if it's okay? The purpose of the minutes is to agree them as an accurate record of the meeting last time. We can take up actions around things separately, and we can follow that up with the OPCC, but it's simply on this occasion to confirm their accuracy. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I've got as far as just asking if everyone was satisfied with the minutes, taking that as yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. I think we've got a few, haven't we? Excuse me. Yeah, I've got Councillor Richardson, Mrs. Harding, and I think the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner is Holden.
And Gillian as well. Yeah, Gillian.
Yes. Yeah. Item 3.
I presumed you've got Councillor Elliott. I know he's gone for surgery.
I haven't got any apology.
We've not received.
We've not received that.
I found out today as well.
Oh, okay. We'll note that. Thank you. We haven't received anything. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Okay.
If I could move then to item 3, declaration of interest by members or officers on both pecuniary or non-pecuniary. Stretching my neck around to make sure I can see everyone. No is required. Thank you. That moves us then to item 4, which is an absolute delight to welcome Natalie Baker. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you.
I think we've given you quite an allotted amount of time because this is obviously quite an important issue for the membership here. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions once you've gone through your presentation. For those of you that don't know Natalie, she's the head of the series. I get all that wrong. You can see it on there.
And so I'm head of the Violence Reduction Partnership,
thank you.
so working to carry on.
Can everyone hear? The microphone.
I haven't got the microphone on currently, so is that a little bit better?
That's better for me. Is that okay for
I'm
everyone?
usually quite loud, so I will go with the microphone. Thank you so much. So yes, thank you for all for having me here today. I'm really pleased to come and talk about the work that we're doing as a violence reduction partnership for Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. I have sent around a report, and the contents of this report have essentially been transposed into this presentation because it hopefully illustrates a little bit more about the work of the VRP. So the purpose of the report really today is to take you through developments from a national policy landscape in terms of the introduction of Young Futures prevention partnerships and panels. I'll talk a little bit about the public health approach that we take as a partnership, local performance in regard to serious violence, and also in terms of our developing response strategy for serious violence across the city and county. I'll talk about the proposed priorities which will be signed off by the board at the end of this week, and also a short summary of the activity. So just to take you through the background to VRUs. So in 2019, Nottinghamshire were one of 18 areas to set up violence reduction units to provide strategic leadership and coordination of the partnership's response to tackle serious violence as a whole system and as part of a public health approach, which I'll outline a little bit more about what that means. But essentially, the funding is received by the Police and Crime Commissioner. We have a team embedded within the Police and Crime Commissioner's office, and the Commissioner essentially takes a convening role in bringing partners together, what are termed specified authorities, under the serious violence duty to work together to prevent and reduce serious violence. So the specified authorities include Nottinghamshire Police, Youth Justice Service, the Integrated Care Board, local authorities, Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue under the convening authority of the PCC, but we also work alongside education and prisons, and also the secure units for children who are termed as relevant authorities. So just a little bit about the public health approach. I presented at this panel, but it was a few years ago, so accepting that we may have had some turnover, I thought it was just useful to touch on what this is. So essentially, violence is a public health issue. Living without fear of violence and its impact is a fundamental requirement for the health and well-being of individuals and communities in Nottinghamshire. Locally, we have adopted public health principles that are woven through everything we do and the way that we work, and they're stated in our strategy. So we will make a difference to whole populations. So rather than focusing on individuals or smaller communities and groups, it's recognising that different communities and groups may have different needs and may be more disproportionately impacted by serious violence. We work as a whole system, so that means rather than working as individual agencies, this isn't an issue that the police can tackle on their own to prevent children and young people and communities being impacted. And we're also committed to working in partnership with communities as well. We intervene early to prevent issues emerging, believing that intervention is absolutely better than cure. Intervening early reduces the impact of adversity and changes community norms through education, policy changes, and preventing issues emerging in the first place. And we consider what we call the causes of the causes. So looking beyond the presenting issue, such as an incident of serious violence, and looking at that journey of an individual to understand what opportunities there might have been to intervene as a system earlier, to learn from that, and then to make the necessary policy and practice changes. And finally, we make sure that our work is evidence informed. So when I worked with my colleague to set up the VRP in 2019, there wasn't a great deal of evidence as to what worked to prevent serious violence. However, over the past 6 years, as locally and also nationally, we've been really able to build on that evidence base to inform what we do, but also all the interventions that are commissioned through the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office under the VRP are evaluated to add to that national evidence base and help us to understand what works. So just to touch on the national policy landscape, which has changed somewhat in the last few months. So I'm pleased to say, first of all, that we've received funding from the Home Office for another year for the continuation of the VRU in Nottinghamshire, and it's a rollover amount of funding. However, we have had slight changes to the requirements of what we're expected to do as a partnership. So in line with the Labour government mandate, the 20 VRUs across England and Wales have been tasked to set up Young Futures prevention partnerships in their respective geographic areas during 25 and 26. So this is a pilot year. So the learning that is gathered from those partnership approaches in this first year will then be extended to all local authority areas across England and Wales. The purpose of this really is to continue to drive that multi-agency partnership approach and improve evidence-based commissioning, but also to ensure that the right support is available for children and young people before they come into contact with the criminal justice system. And one of the key changes that we'll be implementing to make that happen are multi-agency panels. So they're called Young Futures Prevention Partnership Panels. And this will ensure essentially we've got the right people around the table to identify children and young people upstream of being impacted by the criminal justice system. Whilst we're still awaiting guidance from the Home Office as to exactly what this might look like, what we anticipate it would be is any individual who's had an interaction with the police where there's been no further action on 2 occasions within the last 12 months. But also we anticipate it being our discretion to identify additional vulnerabilities. So we've seen in the journey of a lot of young people who've entered the criminal justice system, potentially exclusion from school, frequently missing from school, frequently missing from home, but also other vulnerabilities that we might identify as a partnership. We will essentially identify those young people and we will search through multi-agency systems to understand if they're already connected with a statutory service. Where they're not, it's a consent-based model, so we would look to engage with that child and their family to essentially discuss them at that panel, to identify support for the child, and then essentially follow their outcomes over the preceding months. This is additionality to what we've currently got in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. Whilst we do currently work with children aged 10 to 17, there isn't this multi-agency panel approach. I think we're in a very positive position to meet it in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. We already have something set up like this in Mansfield, which we'll seek to build upon, and we'll also be trialling something similar in the city. The timescales for that are to be implemented by October 2025, so it will be a 6-month pilot. So moving on to local performance, and I think it's really important to say, as we've seen the news over the recent weeks and months, that obviously recent incidents of knife crime in the city have absolutely impacted individuals, families and communities greatly and continue to be of utmost concern, and we're looking to learn from those incidents as a partnership to see what we could have done sooner to prevent them. However, I just want to reassure the panel that those incidents don't indicate a pattern of increasing serious violence in our communities. So some of the data that's in your report and that I've got on the screen today shows you the 3 KPIs that we're measured against as a partnership by the Home Office. So the first, which you can see on the screen, it mentions hospital attendances. Now I have to give a caveat here. There is information data set called Information Sharing to Tackle Serious Violence, which is received at a national level. Unfortunately, there's been a change in hospitals in England and Wales whereby individuals going into hospital now have to give their consent for that aggregated data to be shared. As you can imagine, not all individuals will do so, therefore it's not a reliable record. So what we are now looking at is hospital admissions, whilst at a national level they seek to change that. As you can see, over the years since the baseline year, there has been a decrease. And if I just move on to the next slide, in terms of hospital admissions over the last rolling 12 months to February, we are currently at 20. So if you look at all ages, so that's a reduction of -7%. If you look across the last 12 months for those aged 25 and under, it's a reduction of 33% since the baseline year. So that was when the VRP was set up in 2019. So it's positive, albeit I think it's really important to say we can't be complacent about this. We need to see the numbers continuing to go down, but I'm really encouraged by the direction in which it's going. In terms of other KPIs, so knife-enabled serious violence, so this is crime data, this is police data. As you can see, there has been a reduction, a reduction of 3% over the last 12 months. Again, important to note that this doesn't just include public space knife crime. So this is inclusive of sexual assault, rape, homicide, attempted murder, ABH, GBH, business robbery, personal robbery, and threats to kill, where a knife is involved. And then in terms of non-domestic homicides, as you can see, we've had 100% reduction in the last year. It's important to note that the 3 homicides that occurred in June 2023, which are absolutely notable, were recorded in 22-23, hence why you'll see a 0 on 23-24. Data, in terms of how we share data as a partnership, is absolutely imperative in informing our strategic response, but also our operational response. We accept at the moment we're not quite where we want to be in terms of data sharing. So at the moment, the VRP team under Commissioner Godden's leadership are bringing in a common data platform. So essentially all agencies will be able to see one version of the data and not receive different variations on it to inform their strategic and tactical response. And that will be landing in April. So just to move on to the serious violence response strategy, I'm just going to share this slide briefly. There's lots of colourful boxes on there, but essentially it aims to outline where the serious violence response strategy, which is that orange box in the centre halfway down, sits within the broader police and crime plan. So essentially the serious violence response strategy sets out the details of Commissioner Godden's priority to tackle knife crime and serious violence. The serious violence response strategy is out for consultation. It will go to our Strategic Violence Reduction Board, which Commissioner Godden chairs, on Thursday for sign-off and publication. And underneath that, we have a serious violence partnership delivery plan, which essentially will enable us to monitor that all agencies, aforementioned agencies, are doing their bit to continue to reduce serious violence in our communities. So in terms of some of the emerging priorities, and again, this is with the caveat of they are yet to be signed off by the board, although broad agreement was had at the last board workshop in January. We will look to support girls and young women in the criminal justice system. This isn't to say that we are taking our eye off boys and young men. They are disproportionately impacted by serious violence, both as victims and as perpetrators. It's recognising, however, that we have had a marginal increase in girls and young women impacted by serious violence in the public space over the last 12 months. So what we want to do is understand their different needs, see how we can seek to identify those girls earlier, particularly where they might have been a witness to violence or where they are in a relationship with a perpetrator, to essentially ensure that there are gender-informed pathways in place for those girls. One of the key things which we will be seeking to do in terms of our priorities over the next 12 months is address the role that drug supply plays in exploitation. We are quite good as a partnership at identifying those children and young people that are at risk of exploitation. Where I think we need to improve is disrupting the adults that are essentially exploiting children. And finally, collaborating with education in preventing serious violence. Education, young people spend so much of their time in educational establishments. It's important that they feel physically and psychologically safe in those spaces, that they're given educational interventions that prevent them from becoming involved in serious violence, but also that we take a really inclusive approach to children and young people, because there's a number of young people whose exclusion has been a part of their journey into the criminal justice system, and we really want to keep them in mainstream education for as long as possible. Beneath those 3 priorities, there are 2 golden threads. One is child first. We recognise that a lot of our agencies can improve their practice in how they engage with children. So particularly where there are agencies engaging with both adults and children and applying adult-based policies to children, we need to recognise the difference in their understanding, the difference in their biological development, brain development, which it goes on until a young person is 25 years old. but also making sure we've got those pathways that acknowledge that they are children first and foremost, and that they are listened to and engaged with. Trauma informed is also something we have led on in Nottingham for the past 3 years, and this is really about recognising the journey of both victims and perpetrators and the trauma that they might experience, and how that may increase their likelihood of becoming victims or perpetrators or reoffending within the criminal justice system. So the Commissioner has made a commitment to lead on those areas of systemic change as set out in the police and crime plan for next year. Okay, this pretty boxes up here is our strategic framework. Essentially, this sets out our strategic framework for the response strategy for the next year. It uses a life course approach, so we work with children from birth up to 25 years, through to childhood, adolescence and adulthood, with a core focus on primary and early intervention approaches. We looked at mitigate a number of overlapping risk factors, which may increase the likelihood of a child becoming impacted by crime, either as a victim or perpetrator. And this framework, essentially, all of those settings and areas of focus are interlinked with one another, recognising the complexity of you can't just work with a child in school and expect it to get the positive outcomes. We need to work across the whole system, as I described earlier, in a strategically coordinated way. Oh, geez, it's a bit of a lag. There we go. What I've included in the report also is a summary of the key activity which the VRP team and also the broader partnership intend to overtake over the coming months. I don't propose to cover every point. It's all in the report, but I will just touch on a few key areas. So each of these sections are under one of those boxes within the strategic framework. So focusing first and foremost on families, parenting and early years. This is really about promoting positive, nurturing and resilient caregiving environments for our children. We will look to co-produce with children and young adults, universal resources for parents. So when a young person leaves education, primary education, going into secondary education, there isn't currently one resource that they can access to keep their child safe outside of the home, whether that be online harm or whether it be more safeguarding within the community. So we intend to co-produce that with them. We will also continue to fund our trauma-informed therapeutic support for children who grow up in homes witnessing domestic abuse. Again, we know this tends to be in the journey of young people entering the criminal justice system. Employment and training pathways is a really key area for us, making sure there is meaningful and equitable training and employment opportunities for children and young people. A lot of the children and young people that I meet in my journey often talk about their lack of hope for opportunity for the future. And if we can show them that there are those opportunities, despite what vulnerabilities they may have experienced, then that can really start to change their life course. So we'll look to define the strategic and operational offer in the city and county, and we're also looking at additional funding streams through the private sector to support training, apprenticeships and employment pathways which are supported for children and young people. And finally, probably our biggest area is early identification and support. So I've talked a little bit about the Young Futures prevention panels and the trauma strategy. I've also been engaging with partners in the prevent agenda to ensure that there aren't any gaps between young people who maybe have been identified through prevent mechanisms and those that are identified through the violence reduction partnership, to ensure we don't have any gaps within that system and that we're able to identify appropriate support for them. We'll be focusing on transitional safeguarding. We know that there is a key area of vulnerability where children leave children's services and go into potentially adult services, or where there aren't adult services, that we will continue to make sure that there's a safety net for them. Finally, just on this area, we will continue to deliver and evaluate our focused deterrence model. So that's supporting children and young people who've been identified as part of group offending. The next section is really around safe community environments. So we currently commission a number of youth work models, detached youth work models in the city that will be extended into the county. And that's really extending a flexible resource that is responsive to needs. So where there's been an incident or where there are community tensions in an area, we can deploy that team, those teams into that area to support children, young people and wider communities. We'll also be extending that into education settings over the next year. Moving on to schools, education and inclusion. The Healthy Relationships programme that has been commissioned for the last year will ensure that remains responsive to the evidence base and continues to deliver in primary and secondary school settings. But we'll also start to deliver a more targeted arm of that, which focuses on children and young people who've been assessed as having risks around sexual violence. In terms of positive activities and trusted adults, this is really key. We know that the one thing that absolutely works for a child or young person in changing their journey is to have a positive relationship and a trusted adult in their life that they can confide in. So it's really important we make sure that that's available to them. We'll be mapping all the current youth provision that we have in the city and county and understanding of where those gaps are, so we can improve signposting to services across the city and county throughout the partnership. We'll be refreshing our youth work strategy, which essentially seeks to give equity in access to workforce development for the voluntary and community sector. We have a really vibrant voluntary and community sector in the city and the county, and often they're not able to access accredited youth work training. And we'll also be delivering our Sports Plus programme, which is sport and mentoring. In terms of equality, equity and justice, so this is really about reducing the impact of violence on those communities that we know are more disproportionately impacted. I lead a city and county disproportionality group in youth justice. And what we are seeking to do, we've developed a really coherent strategy focusing on ethnicity, neurodiversity and gender to start to really understand where the issues are as a system and start to plug those gaps. And finally, in line with our priority, we will continue to ensure that we have gender-informed prevention services in place. The final slide, policy and information sharing. So we need to make sure we have robust policy frameworks and sharing of information between partners to address risk factors. So I've talked about Child First. We are implementing the Serious Violence Data Dashboard as I've referenced. And then in terms of social norms and values, it's really about addressing those harmful attitudes, beliefs and social norms, for example, that may cause a child to carry a knife. We'll be developing a campaign that's co-produced with children and young people that uses counter-narrative to promote and foster feelings of safety and assurance and reduce weapon carrying. And we'll also be working with wider partners to make sure that we've got really robust mechanisms in place in terms of a joint communication strategy, so we can share some of the really positive work that's happening in the city and county and not always be reliant on other information sources. And last but not least, sustainability. As I've mentioned, we have had a one-year funding rollover. If we're really going to start to change the life course of children and young people, it needs to be 10 years, it needs to be much longer. Whilst we wait for developments in terms of the comprehensive spending review in June, Commissioner Godden and I have been having roundtables with the private sector to understand where their goals are in terms of corporate social responsibility. And there's some really positive conversations happening about how they might start to invest longer term in the approaches that the VRP and the broader partnership are taking and the voluntary community sector to improve outcomes for children in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. That is the end of my presentation, and I would welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Natalie. That's a very comprehensive walkthrough of quite a complex programme.
Yes.
So you're not going to ask us any questions on it, I hope. Thank you for that. There will be people who want to ask questions. Perhaps I can invite Councillor Ellis to lead off. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chair. One of your clarify this?
Absolutely, yeah. Of course, yeah.
No,
No, that's fine. Yeah.
One of your last comments was about a 10-year plan, which makes perfect sense. It's not something we addressed overnight. But the performance data you gave us, the partnership's been in existence for 5 years.
Yes.
The data doesn't seem to relate to that. I look back at the ONS statistics and comparing 2019-2020 to 2023-24, which is the most recent information. The offences per that 100,000 population in Nottinghamshire went down by 6 percentage points from 77 to 71. But in the East Midlands as a whole, it went down from 77 to 67.
Yeah.
And in England, whereas it went down from 90 to 88. So I suppose the question is, can you demonstrate to us that the partnership has made a difference in the last
absolutely.
5 years?
So when we look at data locally, we're not necessarily just looking at police data. We need to look at ambulance data, health data, and also police data and triangulate those areas. So what we have seen nationally, and unfortunately, I did try to get it before I came today, but wasn't able to. The Home Office track those KPIs across all areas that have a VRU versus those areas that don't. And in terms of the proportionate impact, looking at those KPIs, the areas that do have VRUs have made a far greater impact than those that don't. Homicide, not so much, because the numbers are so small anyway, it's not statistically significant. But in terms of hospital admissions and attendance, it's come right down.
But in terms of, I suppose, what a layperson would say, the amount of knife crime on the streets, is there no measure of how that's performing over the last 5 years?
I can certainly get that data for you. I don't have it to hand currently. I'm looking to Don. I don't know if he's
not 5 years. No, we've got the picture of the last year, but we can look at the long.
We can certainly provide that, but essentially there has been a steady decrease.
But that's the question. I think that part of the interesting is we've had the high profile violence reduction partnership for 5 years. Can we say it's changed anything?
Yes, we can, in terms of the KPIs that I've just put on there, in terms of the minus 33% reduction in knife crime hospital admissions.
Interesting, still a more balanced scorecard.
Yeah, that's what we currently monitored on by the Home Office. So that's the information that we received. So unfortunately, I don't have anything else to hand at the moment, but I'm sure we can supply it another day.
And can I just finish one thing that I didn't understand? Am I right in saying that your focus is 0 to 20 or 125s?
It's 0 to 25. So predominantly we work with children aged 10 up to young adults aged 25, recognising that transitionary period is sometimes quite a vulnerable period for young people.
Are older people less likely to be involved?
Not at all. I think it's more that there is more opportunity to prevent earlier on and upstream with that younger cohort. Yeah.
Councillor Jenkins. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Jenkins next.
Yes, thank you.
At some stage.
Okay, Natalie, I mean, thank you for that presentation. It's quite in depth. But what I want to pick up on is the perceptions and the fears of knife crime and serious crime in our communities, and the fact that the fear and the perception are real.
Yes.
For our residents and potentially concerning for our visitors. So my question is, what are we doing to publicly address this, and what strategies are in place to measure any shortcomings in the current arrangements that these partnerships and panels are designed to address?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of the monitoring, if I can touch on that first. So that's monitored by Commissioner Godden at the Police and Crime Panel, the Strategic Violence Reduction Board, which takes place on a quarterly basis under his convening role. We also provide quarterly reports to the Home Office on our reach and our data according to all the interventions that we commission, and more broadly our strategic systems response. So we are monitored through those means. In terms of perception, that data is monitored through the Police and Crime Survey, so we do keep an eye on that. But I'm fully in agreement. If communities aren't feeling safer, then there's more that we need to do. So hence that sort of joint comms strategy, working with partners. I think there is more to do. We can do to share the really positive work that's happening. Unfortunately, when you see in the traditional press, if a child, a young person, a family sees in the traditional press and is feels fearful of violence, that is more likely to make them pick up a knife. That is the situation. So anything we can do as a broader partnership to reassure, then that is absolutely going to make a lasting difference.
Did you want to come back, Councillor? You finally, thank you. Councillor Wilmot and then Councillor Woodings, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very informative information there. I've always been an advocate of early intervention, real early intervention, and that starts in your hubs that have just been formed by Nottinghamshire County Council, etc., in families, because it's by talking to families and finding out what the problems are, what's causing the youngster to do horrible things. And I think it includes when the youngster gets a problem and has to go to the NHS, the position should be that whoever's treating that person, and if that person has got real problems, that should be reported to the necessary people, so that we can start to fathom out what the problem is before it escalates into real problems, and we've got to that person leading a bunch of other people on the streets, really doing nasty things and so forth. I just wondered if there's any work being done on that.
In hospitals specifically, or more broadly in terms of identifying children?
It's a partnership approach.
Yeah.
It's a partnership approach. We've got to get that into his memory, that it's partnerships that'll work. It's not individuals. The police can't do everything on their own, and they won't be able to do everything on their own. They've got to go right from when the young child is born. They've got to put things into place that will address the problems that are going to alleviate, are going to be when it gets older. We've got to be more proactive with public health systems, the mental health organisations. The amount of people that they're seeing at the moment is escalating beyond all belief, and we want to know why that is happening, and the police can get the information that that child is. We really have to make sure that the family gets some help in that situation, because otherwise that's what it escalates into serious issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they see the knives being bought by other people, and of course that they want one of those, and we all know it's so easy to get one from off the internet and so forth. It's unbelievable. Why we allow that to happen, that's another serious issue that needs to be addressed. Now, what I'm saying also is, on your headline measures, how well you're doing, 33% reduction, 27%, 7% reduction. I wonder if you think that could be because of under-reporting. Under-reporting at the present time is unbelievable.
It could certainly, when we look at police data on its own, that could be a factor. But in terms of hospital admissions, that is a more reliable source. And also we look at EMAS data, so ambulance data. So we have to have a look at all of this with a caveat. But I have confidence that once you triangulate those three data sets together, it gives you a very good idea of the trend.
So why are we underreporting? And then it is everything being underreported. Is the police doing the right thing when the surgeries that they're actually doing at the present time? Now, they started off in my area, fantastic, but they're going to the wrong places. They're going to shops that nobody ever goes into, or you'll see half a dozen people going into. It's got to be sort of a situation where you look at where all the action is taking place, and then go into that area, knocking on the doors, finding out exactly what is happening. And until you do that, you won't see a situation arising where things are going better. And as I say, that there are at the present time bunches of individuals going around in our towns, especially in my town, and that has got to be stopped somehow. And we do have to take action in those areas. And I just wondered what sort of action we can do when there were 20 youths running about in a high street, and somebody rings up. Hopefully they ring up, because very often they don't. And that is the major problem. They don't ring up. When they ring up, what actually happens? Are the perpetrators arrested, or are they just moved on? Or what
it will absolutely depend on the circumstances, so I can't necessarily give you a blanket response to that. If it's antisocial behaviour, it would obviously be managed through those processes. If it's serious violence, if those young people are carrying knives, then that's something entirely different. So knife possession is taken very seriously. The number of knife possessions that are being identified in the city and county have gone up remarkably, and that's due to the proactive work of police officers within our communities. So they would be referred in through youth justice if they're taken into custody and supported, and then the appropriate pathway for those children. But what I'm really keen to do, as I'd outlined in the presentation, is really think about where we might have adults that are exploiting those children that may make them more likely to be carrying a knife for whatever reason, and working with them to disrupt those drug supply chains.
Now you're setting up these panels.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, Councillor, but I've got other people who want to take advantage. I'm sure one question I should have asked you at the beginning, if people want to have a copy of your slides as a way of presenting that and talking to your colleagues,
yes,
then that, you know, if you
and the full response strategy will be published in a week or so, so they can access that.
Yeah, because I've got other people waiting. I've got Councillor Woodings, and then Councillor Introna, and then Mayor Abrahams.
Thank you very much, Natalie, for the presentation. I want to start by saying how incredibly disappointing it is that the data on hospital attendances can't be shared with a public body that's been given funding specifically to stop hospital attendances
really
for knife crime. It's, you know, we have a data sharing agreement with the ICB from Public Health where they produce a dashboard. Public bodies can be given access to that dashboard, and the information is there and anonymised. So there's no need for you know, GDPR to, for example, to kick in. So I'm just absolutely agog that.
I don't know if just to clarify, it's not that we can't access it, it's just not reliable because of then people going into hospital, attendance hospital, they're going to have to complete it. So it's just not reliable.
You would give consent for your personal information to be passed over to another body. But statistically, there's absolutely no reason why those statistics couldn't be shared with another trusted public body. So it's disappointing in a way that a lot of these, you know, the money has been given for reduction in hospital attendances, but it's only if you're actually admitted to a bed that you appear on this table. I would be very interested, like my colleague, Councillor Ellis, in understanding the outcomes of the previous programmes that have actually been funded by the PCC's office. Now, I know in Nottingham they've had the Ben Kinsella project was set up at the National Justice Museum, and young people from different schools were taken along to the Ben Kinsella project. Really effective, we were told, but I've never seen any outcome details from that. We also did a programme in Nottingham of young people who've witnessed or related to or you know, friends and colleagues of people who'd either committed or suffered knife crime as well, and that was a diversionary programme as well. So I don't know what the outcome became of that, but there was lots of funding for lots of organisations about preventing. And I suppose in relation to this set of programmes, how are you going to measure that prevention with those young people? And then I just wanted to know how young people are going to be referred into the service, and also has there been co-production and feedback from those previous programmes as to what you're actually designing now with the new funding?
Yeah, no problem at all. So just in terms of impact, so we are coming to the end of a 3-year funding period for a number of interventions across the city and county. Once this year is over and we have the full 3 years of funding, there will be an impact report that is published. We have a common outcomes framework across all our interventions across the partnership. So we'll look at things like mental health, wellbeing, attendance at school, school attainment, and I can absolutely share that full outcomes framework with you. So that will be published and available, but just to reassure you, the outcomes have been very positive. We also have independent evaluation of every intervention that we commission. So Loughborough University have just finished evaluating our Sport Plus, which was very positive, as well as a number of other academic evaluations, some of which are randomised control trials, but they're really, really robust. So again, they are available on the website and to view. In terms of co-production, so we do work with children and young people. We do a lot of qualitative research with children and young people to understand their feelings and thoughts and ideas around this subject matter. We also co-produce, so we have a youth voice group which meets with children in the city and county, as well as the Police and Crime Commissioners Youth Commission, to co-produce interventions with us. So we've done a number of campaigns in the past, but also other interventions, and they're invited to have a place on the table around steering groups, as well as community and voluntary sector attendees as well. It's really important.
I look forward to getting the results of the 3-year programme. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Introner, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. I've got 2 quick questions. I absolutely concur with my colleagues around the table, and one of my concerns is that if you've got data that you've said yourself, it becomes meaningless if it's unreliable, and over a period of time it becomes meaningless. And I suppose that's where Commissioner Godden, you have the opportunity, because you're obviously operating at a national level, to talk to some of your colleagues. You get access to Justice Secretary and Home Secretary and all that sort of thing, to lobby for the changes that you need to help our police take some of the shackles and some of the things that are frustrating to them and help us make better decisions on funding. And I know that when I talk to police officers, one of the big problems they have is just the frustration that they have on a day-to-day basis of not being able to do the job because of some really, really silly rules.
It was until very recently that we did have that data. I'm hoping it will be back online again very soon. But as I said, I just didn't want to present it today as it may be unreliable.
Okay. Can I go back to something you said very early on? You talked about young people in interventions at an early stage, hopefully with their families, sometimes with the local community groups. What levers do you have if they don't want to enter into those discussions?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So through our focused deterrence interventions, so that's working with children and young people who have been identified as part of group offending. The model that we have used is employing voluntary and community sector groups, like caseworkers, if you like, that will engage with them at every opportunity. So if they turn up in a hospital, they've been admitted, we will engage with them. If they turn up at school, we will engage with them. And we will keep going back and back and back until they accept that offer of support. And we've been really successful with our focused deterrence intervention. There are 5 other areas in the England and Wales testing it. In terms of the level of engagement we've had with children and young people, it's currently 40%, which actually is quite positive when it's a consent-based model. Some areas have enjoyed only sort of 20% or lower in terms of engagement. But unfortunately, if there isn't a statutory provision in place, it does make it more difficult. What we do need to do is go to the places where they are, within their communities, rather than expecting them to come to us.
Okay, thank you. And my second question was around, it's actually in the performance framework, but one of the numbers that stood out for me, not my area, that first time, youth justice first time entrance for the city, down 49% a year. I mean, that's just a wow number, isn't it?
Yes.
We can all talk about statistics and I've got some numbers I want to discuss later, but that's just an absolutely wow number. What have we done there that perhaps is our learnings or things that we can take into this project?
Of course. So that is very much due to partnership working between youth justice and local authorities. Some of the key interventions that have been put in place are deferred cautions. We're also looking at deferred prosecutions at the moment. So it's about once a young person is identified, giving them opportunity to take part in an intervention before they go through the criminal justice system. That's only for much lower level offences, so not the most serious offences, I hasten to add. But where it is lower level offences, then we will give them that opportunity. Unfortunately, we know that once a young person goes into the criminal justice system, their propensity to potentially reoffend is far greater. So if we can get them earlier on, essentially, and support them, then that has had a real positive effect in terms of reducing first-time entrants, but also reoffending rates. But just to say, it's not a soft option. They will be engaged for 3 months, and if they don't engage, it will be back to court.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I suppose there's an element to the old broken windows philosophy that Giuliani in New York
Yes.
We're getting out of line stuff.
Absolutely.
Natalie, thank you for candid feedback. Just on those numbers on the offending rates, Dan, just one other thing. I would love when we get to this section to understand the difference between the binary reoffending rate and the frequency reoffending rate. I know what binary is and I know what frequency is, but I just don't want to put you on the spot. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Well done on the city.
Thanks.
I've got Mary.
Yeah, just a few questions. So on the education side of things, do we go to alternative education providers? Because obviously a lot of those young people are already kind of lost their way. That year 6 to year 7 transition, again, is a really crucial area where they lose their way. And it's also how do we tie in with other initiatives? So through different look fundings and whatever. I can give an example. We've got Best Start happening at Oak Tree in Mansfield with Nottinghamshire University. So it's just making sure that we're not working in silos, and their part, they know what you're doing. And the youth training work, really interested in that. And is there any connection in Mansfield with Mansfield CBS? Because obviously that's another programme we want to try and it's the outreach work in those areas using the community champions. And just on the communication strategy, it's been touched on by quite a few people, but do we have like real life stories that we can actually share? Because that's that no matter what the statistics are,
yes, it's the real life stories that make the difference.
They're powerful.
Yeah, so I'll just try and briefly answer your questions, and obviously if you want any further information, then it can be provided. In terms of alternative provisions, we do work with alternative provisions. So we have a education navigation services that will be working in alternative provisions, but also work to understand some of the best practice we've seen in alternative provisions in terms of attendance, for example. As I'm sure you're aware, it can be quite low. So what best practice can we take, like partners such as Stone Soup, for example, and put that in place in others and make sure that they're sharing best practice. So there is a lot of work that goes on there. And we also have a representative from the Raleigh Trust who oversees a number of the alternative provisions on our board to make sure that we're always considering that setting as well. In terms of silo working around funding, this is always a risk because funding can change one year to the next. And what I try to do, obviously, through our partnership forums is really get a gauge on what's happening in different organisations. So the universities is a really good example. We have a representative from NTU that sits on our board and will keep us abreast of some of that. But it's really up to me to kind of keep an eye on the landscape and make sure that we're building on and not seeking to duplicate or work in silo. So it's ever challenging, but we certainly try and keep on top of that. In terms of voluntary community sector and training, yes, we are linked in with the CBSs both in Mansfield and in Nottingham City. What I really want to do is, and we've been having conversations this week with funding partners about a 10-year funding, potentially to keep that going in terms of whether it be accredited youth work training, whether it be continuous professional development around issues such as identifying exploitation, trauma-informed approaches or child-first approaches, and they've been really positive because that is absolutely a gap. We know there's the willingness and there's the skills in the voluntary community sector, but they don't always get access to that training. What that would also give us is young people who we know are getting a quality assured service.
Trusted partners.
Trusted partners, absolutely. And then in terms of the comms, yes, case studies are something we do tend to put out on social media platforms and as part of press releases. I think we need to do more of that because there are some really positive case stories that we can share with young people, but obviously we have to be sensitive to the fact that they are still children, and putting them in the public eye so often they will clearly be anonymised. But yes, that's something we do need to do more of as part of our joint comms strategy.
Thank you.
Natalie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think you can tell by the amount of Q&As, and I think we could have got more if we wanted to.
Well, no.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor, did you want to come in?
I did, yeah, I feel left out.
My apologies.
No, not a problem. Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Great report. You know, a lot of work going into that and everything. Just trying to keep it short really now. Is all that work's going on in the background. How does that manifest itself to the public? They're reassuring. You know, we had recent events in the city centre where the social media was terrible coming back. But we're not in the city now, won't go anymore. It was all really negative. You know, the police response was, well, there's extra patrols now. Yeah, that's always after the event. You know, if you pick up what Councillor Wilmot says, you know, I know the officers I know, and I know the general feeling of officers, they will deal with things robustly. You know, they're the ones running to the event rather than running away. So I do know the police will be there to tackle it. Problem is how does that come across to the public? How do we get that message across?
That's a $1 billion question, and I wish I could resolve it, but there are certainly things that we're doing. So I talked about the joint comm strategy to make sure that as a partnership we're getting the good stories and the reassuring stories out there as quickly as possible. Social media in and of itself, we can continue to push those, but it is difficult to manage. What we have reinstated, so since we had the 3 incidents in the city, which were, as you say, well reported, myself and the knife crime lead, Chief Inspector Carl Thomas, will be having quarterly meetings that community groups can access, and that will be talking about our operational response, but also our more broader partnership response. And obviously we're hoping as part of that the message gets out there. On top of that, we do have community ambassadors working for the VRP, so they are voluntarily appointed. They are our voices within community, so particularly some of those communities we know are more disproportionately impacted by serious violence, that we can get some of those positive messages out there, but we can also listen to them as well. I think that's probably.
Yeah. I know there's no magic answer for it.
No,
unfortunately. That public reassurance, you know, there's a sort of a sweeping statement, you know, we've lost that from an early age of respect, discipline, consequences for actions. You know, I think that's something I'm an advocate for. If you do something wrong, be accountable for that. That seems to be lost now and watered down somewhat. You mentioned sort of your future, young futures and everything. We've been working with Positive Futures, which is now a lot struggling for funding. Is that something that will engage with this new project, or is it a separate thing?
So there will certainly be opportunity. So all our commissioned interventions do go out to an open tender. So we can absolutely make sure that they're aware of them. If they want opportunity to bid in, they can do that. In terms of the panels themselves, they're based on Greater Manchester's Engage panels. What they had on the panels, as well as statutory agencies, were voluntary and community sector representatives who knew those areas and are potentially working with those children and young people so that they can bring in their own perspective on it as well. So depending on which area those pilots are set up in, we will be bringing in local representatives from the communities to be part of that.
Fantastic. And finally, I've had a couple of people since the attacks in Nottingham asked me how to get rid of knives. Any chance we can have another knife amnesty?
There will be one coming up in May as part of Op Sector. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start again.
Knife amnesty I raised last time. We didn't have any depositories or section areas in Bassett Law at all.
Okay, I can take that back. Absolutely. Yeah, we should have them operating throughout the year, and then there will be extra ones stood up as part of SEPTA, which is every May and November.
Thank you.
Once again, I will get to say thank you very much. It's been, as you can see, really engaging with everyone. Obviously, clearly a very important topic for members here.
Yes.
We'll certainly put you in the diary halfway through your project to come back and give us an update. But thank you very much for
always a pleasure. It's a topic I'm very passionate about, so I will always come and talk about it.
We'll give you 1 or 2 minutes if you need to sort your things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. Can we then move now to item 5 and welcome the Commissioner, and over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you for that. I'm going to quickly start off with some updates so that we can cover the actions from the minutes and let you know what's actually happening. So with regard to Mayor Andy Abrams, with regard to Superintendent Woolley, he's concluded all discussions now with regard to CCTV, with the exception of South Notts. All local authorities have robust plans in place to maintain CCTV provision, monitoring within their respective local authorities. So that's City, Mansfield, Newark and Sherwood. These arrangements will continue to provide live links and niche access, and therefore no adverse effects in operational delivery. So they will continue and will continue to be monitored. So that is your update. Is that okay?
Well, my specific question was about funding. I know we've got a fantastic system in Mansfield, but it's very expensive. So it was along that particular aspect to be thinking about a more imaginative approach, you know, like, so if the information got used for insurance claims, there'd be some kind of, you know, recompense, because they've got valuable information that helps them. So it's that specific element of it. You know, I understand that everybody's got their funding challenges, but it seems disproportionately unfair that the local authority bears the whole cost of those. And I'm talking over since I first started in 2019, we're talking, you know, perhaps towards 1.5 million pounds, you know, and we're making cuts to services, and the benefit is via the police and the community. So it's that particular aspect that I'd like some more imaginative thinking on how it can help us.
I think it kind of fits into some of the stuff that I'm doing at the moment with regard to the private sector assisting in many different ways. And like you've just described there, if you've got insurance companies that are using it, maybe there could be a contribution from them to help and support them do their work, but also help support the council with some of those bills. So it's a wider conversation, and a bit of a sort of groundwork needs to be done. At the moment, I'm doing a series of round tables, not with regard to CCTV, but really looking to try and eke out some companies in the private sector who would want to help support and fund some of the projects to make them longer term and more sustainable. So I think it probably could fit into that sort of remit in many different ways, but we probably need to have a conversation around what that looks like.
Yeah, and then my direct challenge would be even a little percentage out of the budgeting from the PCC could make a great difference to help us get over the line in providing that service.
We'll have a conversation, absolutely. So the other action that there was as well was the Commissioner undertook a visit to, I went to Bassett Law. I know that Councillor Mike Entrona asked me to go, so I went and had a visit there, and I looked at the project that's there on Sandy Hill Lane, which is obviously looking to reduce obviously crime, promote community safety and environmental improvements. So I had a walk around. I met some of the I wouldn't necessarily say they were begging, but some of the people that are outside and in the centre. Yeah. And I'm working with neighbourhood teams in order to try and sort those issues out and look for alternative places for them to be. I also went onto the Sandy Hill estate, had a look around there. looked at our CCTV that we put down there, and behind there there is a beautiful lake, which I was really surprised to see, and all of the work environmentally that they're doing to tidy all of that up, and they've got CCTV down there as well, and it can now cover all of the areas. So it was good to see. It was good to talk to some of the local councillors around some of the issues and the challenges that they have. And I think we've got some more sort of interventions that will be taking place in Bassett Law. So just to say that I've been.
Thank you. I know the area well, Sandy Lane. I know the pond well. All too often recently occupied by lots of feral kids wandering around, demanding menaces to make sure your car's all right and things like that. Quite interesting. Certainly would welcome you to come to Retford as well, where I'm located. But I know works up well. The one challenge I would say is it's fine during the day, the camps, the local park, the library, in a beautiful, beautiful area. As soon as it gets to twilight, it's almost like watching World War Z sometimes. And I know that from my own experience and from workshop myself, I know from the councillors down there. Not quite as bad, but we've had some similar issues in Retford with the park, which we got a great response from the local police.
Great.
After I got in touch with Gary Hook and the others. So thank you. Thanks for the visit. Look forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah, I think a lot of everything that we're discussing, for me, the onset of neighbourhood policing. So I spoke to the local neighbourhood inspector, who's just been appointed for Bassett Law, and he's just explaining to me that it's just taking time to gather the picture of what's happening. And I know that you have that information, but they need to look at it in the round and then start working out what operations and what resources they can put into it to make the difference. So I think as time goes on, this is going to become more effective.
Yeah. One of the challenges is locally, all too often, local council groups can act politically rather than just in a common shared purpose. We do still come back to, though, Bassett Law residents do look at it and say, this is how much we're paying versus X or Y. Is that fair? And I'm more than happy to share with you. We're obviously coming up to 1st of May, and different groups are doing different things in terms of surveys and feedback and all that. I'd say 70 to 80% of all my feedback is come back where I said, what's the one thing you want to see? And it's police presence. To be fair, that's just Retford. I wouldn't imagine it's vastly different elsewhere. And I think when we come back to the other report, we can see an interest in some of that police confidence numbers. And I've got a couple of views on that, which would be helpful. Absolutely. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's that. Sorry, and
Your report.
Sorry?
Your report.
My report, yeah. Sorry, just so that everyone knows where the actions are. So there was a request to update at the future meeting a rollout of abstraction policy, assurance received from via HMIC FRS, reference the inspection, further information to be provided when the final report is published, which will not be too much longer. Also, there was a request for further detail on the process of selecting investigations for quality assurance. I think that information has been passed, and around 450 crimes are randomly selected by the audit team for review each month. So that they take a segment of that and come out with the necessary figures. And then the final one, the panel agreed to receive a separate briefing for sub-indicators, which has been submitted to panel. So they're the actions that were from the last one. It's just to update you so that you know that actions are taken and acted upon. So with regard to my update, quite a lot has been going on for me, which you probably are aware of. So I'm going to start off with Operation Catalyst, which is with reference to the force. So feedback has been received from HMIC in February following the re-inspection, and we are going to be inspected before our next PPOG in victim service assessment. So it's a VSA assessment will be undertaken in April before the force engaged status is formally reviewed. So we will have a formal review of where we are with regard to engaged status. And what I can say from conversations that I've had with HMIC FRS, the dial is pointing very firmly in the right direction now with Nottinghamshire Police. And I'm hoping for some positive news to come very shortly. Also, a host of new success stories that have been made possible through improvements, obviously in the neighbourhood policing model, a multi-agency problem-solving type of policing. Just so you know, a 77% reduction in cycle theft in the city central area following collaborative work with the university and community. A number of prolific shoplifters jailed following a renewed op shrinkage policy, which saw the neighbourhood officers take responsibility for dealing with prolific offenders in the community. Closure orders in Bulwell and Sneinton, which are targeted addresses where source of drugs and drug dealing and antisocial behaviour is happening. Targeted engagement with young people in Worksop, which led to reductions in incidents of antisocial behaviour in Costhorpe. This was on a collaborative effort involving local authorities and police and youth workers. So they're just sort of some of the snap examples of how neighbourhood policing is slowly but surely starting to integrate into its neighbours, and problem-solving policing is starting to take action locally. So I'm hoping that over the next few months or so, you start seeing these good news stories where some of the issues within your local neighbourhoods are resolved. We are also reaching more people now. So 45,000 users signed up to Not's alert system. This is the 6th highest level nationally. We have launched Street Watch in Bestwood, Top Valley, which works with local volunteers to tackle local problems. So this is about connecting people, connecting communities, and making sure that we have the information that is necessary when it comes to crime, antisocial behaviour, and generally just how the neighbourhood and communities are working. So we can assign necessary resources to those issues. We have extended immediate justice scheme by a further 4 months in order to review its achievements and identify opportunities to sustain the project going forward. One of the things you're going to probably hear from me going forward is the restraints on, I suppose, on our funding, and how can we make sure that things are still funded that we feel have an impact, not just to necessarily the individuals involved in those, so they'll be the perpetrators of crime, but also how it impacts our communities and the outcomes as well. So restorative justice, as you know, immediate justice scheme is very much about low-level crime. It's about resolving it. It's about stopping it from getting into courts, and therefore resolving an issue in the simplest way possible, but making sure that the individuals involved know that they have done something, they've reparated for it, and the community can see that and feel that the justice has been done. So we're looking at that. We're going to review it over the next 4 months, and clearly going to be looking at how could we extend it further. It might not be the scheme that it is now. It might be a slightly lesser scheme in terms of funding, but we're going to assess that and really kind of get to the nuts and bolts of how this can be impacted, see if any partners out there can support it. Also, Nottinghamshire was identified as a top performing force in responding to retail crime on the National British Retail Crime Consortium annual report. The work that we're doing in this area includes targeted response by our priority task teams, an offender to rehab scheme, which provides support and diversion treatment services, and a proactive enforcement approach where needed. Been to have a conversation with some of the offenders of retail crime, and it's really interesting because they're really trying to help support some of our retailers in where their weaknesses are in the shop. So it's almost like this full circle has gone around, and we're starting to get some really good results, and we're being recognised across the country for those results. In terms of me and where I've been this month, just to give you some sort of idea, so I was in Hall Farm, Limby, looking at challenges of rural crime and some of the issues that they have. This is a difficult time of year for a lot of farmers because they're planting their vegetables, and there's quite a lot of antisocial behaviour with regard to their crop. So, for example, when they put things like carrots in the ground, they cover them up with straw, and kids come along and set the field alight, and it has a knock-on effect to what they can produce. Really interesting educational element going on in Limby, where they've had a lot of the school kids in, and he specifically does carrots wheat and potatoes, and he had about 50 tons of potatoes. And he took the kids there and he explained to the kids how he supplies McDonald's with all their chips. And that really linked into, but it sort of just shows you how you can link these things to make them understand that if they damage that, then McDonald's don't get the chips.
They'll have no chips.
That's right. But it was quite impactful and sort of like, you know, the lights went on and they got the connections and stuff. So I thought that was really interesting and quite a good little way of demonstrating how their behaviour can impact such sort of things. So so I went there. I've been to Mansfield twice, once for Operation Guardian, which has been run out in the city before, which is support for nighttime economy. So I went one evening chasing around a dog who goes around and sniffs people to see if they've got drugs on them, and then those people are pulled away and dealt with. And obviously help support some of the violence reduction efforts that are going on for the nighttime economy in Mansfield. I also went into Mansfield in the day because looking at the antisocial behaviour around the market and how we can probably sort that out. And I think there's a simple solution, and it might be down to the shift pattern of the neighbourhood teams who are sort of reporting to me on the other side that whilst we have this, the feeling is that if we had a morning shift, we could actually deal with some of the issues that are there a lot better. So that's something I'll take back to Superintendent Woolley and see if there's any flexibility, or they can do a little test of having some officers there in the morning and see what a difference that makes to the market and so on. So been Mansfield quite a bit. I went to Newark, had a look at Newark and the new CCTV. In Newark there's a church, and around the church they really sort of like implemented quite a lot of CCTV and also cleared it up environmentally so that it can be seen. I think there was a violent assault around that area at some point. So work is obviously ongoing there. And I think the poles just need to go in now, so everything's in place. So that's looking quite good. I went to Bingham for a nice walkabout in Bingham, around the Market Square, just talking to local people how they feel about the safety. Some positive feedback there, generally speaking, that in the day it's not a problem, but early evenings can be a little bit more intimidating for some people. So talked to the local beat manager. They're just getting up and running, so they're starting to get a feel for what's happening in that area as well. Obviously, went down to the old Market Square, been down to the old Market Square quite a bit over the last few days. And we've obviously got purple flag status in the city again, which was really good to see about the nighttime economy and the safety elements of that and how safe we are. And there's quite a lot of work happening within the city with regard to the safety of people while they're enjoying the nightlife and everything Nottingham's got to offer. Was down at CRS, Community Recording Studios in St Anne's, with the knife crime agenda. And for those who don't know, I've been on BBC, ITV, Sunday Politics, Notts Post, Notts TV, LBC, talking about my plan, knife crime in Nottingham, and really trying to front up a narrative that is a little bit more positive than the one that's being fed out by social media, and trying to encourage people to use Nottingham, which they are doing, and the feelings of safety. I've also done a walk around in Nottingham city centre, talking to, again, people in Nottingham city centre about how they feel about safety. And there was quite good positive feedback, particularly in the day. A lot of people say they feel safe. However, again, when it comes to the evening, perhaps not so confident about that. So it's quite interesting, obviously, getting out there. I also went to Clifton, so I've been out and about quite a bit. And lastly, really to say that I did a launch of the new CCTV van, which has just been launched for the city. And again, that was all press wide as well, but it's another tool in combating issues of antisocial behaviour and potentially knife crime in the city if there are incidents. With regard to the knife crime in the city, I think it's already been mentioned by Councillor Inglis. The police were really robust in their response. Everybody's been arrested that was involved in any form of knife crime in the city. However, it doesn't address the issue of that we don't feel safe in the city. So more needs to be done. We need to work more collaboration and work together to make sure that the right message is coming out rather than the media holding the narrative. I think we as responsibility partners within Nottinghamshire need to hold that narrative and really start making it to be a lot more positive than it has been, some of the negativity. So that's me. That's where I've been. Open to questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your whistle-stop tour of Nottinghamshire.
Yes.
Interesting, thank you. I've got Councillor Jenkins first, I think.
Gary, thanks for that. What I'd just like to explore with you, for my benefit more than anybody else's in here, I imagine, is that the deployment of increased high visibility patrols within the city. Okay. Now, what I'd like to try and understand, this report is based on this year.
Mm.
Is there anything that we can measure the changes or the improvements or the decrease from before, so we can look at it to see how we are improving based on this report? Or is it just this report we've got to go on? And
what with regard to?
Because I want to measure what it was like before, to see if there is a decrease or an increase.
What, in knife crime?
Or serious violence crime.
Serious violence, okay.
Yeah. Because I know you've been out and about in town.
Mm-hmm.
I cover St. Anne's, but there is a clear view that it's not decreasing. Statistically, we can say it is.
Yeah.
But it's that fear. So what I'm trying to do is get a measurement, and I know this is this year's report, but a measurement in performance. What it was like before, to what you're introducing and how effective that is to trim that balance.
The straight answer at this time, the answer is probably not at this time. However, we can historically go and have a look. And as Nata said, the VRP it's 5 years old. So we can perhaps go back 5 years and start looking at some of the figures. If you need that information, I'm sure we can get it provided for you.
Just trying to get a trend.
Yeah, baseline. Yeah,
I'd welcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to ask about, obviously we've had to deploy additional patrols in the city centre because of recent incidents there. But it was just a quick reminder that we're due to get a report, hopefully, on the abstractions policy as well, which I know is part of the Operation Catalyst measures that they were looking at anyway. I think we were kind of hoping for a 6-monthly report once that actually took place, just to see the difference that it's made in neighbourhood policing teams not being abstracted off to sort of different serious incidents. So it'd be quite interesting to know at times like that, then what difference does that make to the neighbourhood policing when something happens, somewhere in the city centre? And also, I noticed there've been 2 dispersal orders by the Notts police over the past few months. And I just wondered if you I don't want to know the details, but do you get notified about dispersal orders being put into place? Because obviously that is sort of, essentially it's like an infringement of people's liberties. And I think it's to do with dispersing groups of 2 or more people, isn't it? I don't think anyone from the City Council actually found out what those dispersal orders were about, but do you get to know that?
No, I don't. It would be classed as operational policing, I guess.
No, right.
And however, it's a point that I'll take on board, because if they can give me what's being done and where it's effective, that might be helpful information for me. So I don't see there's a problem in understanding that.
I know previously it was done if there was when there was a knife crime incident and they felt it was related, there might be other incidents occurring. That was back in 2019. That was one of the reasons why a dispersal order was introduced, to stop there from being any further incidents. And there was also a lot of, I think we talked about it under the previous report, sort of like there was a lot of monitoring of what was happening on social media, because that was, situations could inflame in a really short space of time, and dispersal orders were introduced for that. But I'd be interested to know what the accountability is for the imposition of those orders. Surely have to be like a justified reason as to, you wouldn't do it for no reason.
No, they can't just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to be a justified reason. So I think we can probably find that out.
Yeah,
so that's not going to
Thank
be.
you very much.
And with regard to, just so you know, with regard to the policing in the city, it was done through overtime.
Okay.
Done through abstract.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got a few more people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Thatcher and then Mrs. Dalby.
I was just wanting to ask about the new CCTV van that you've got. We've got some communities within Broxton that don't have CCTV, but they have got some kind of antisocial behaviour problems of an evening, same area, expertise, but no way of monitoring it. They've asked me before about, have you got any mobile CCTV in Nottinghamshire? And now it seems there is. I was wondering, is there any chance of this Home Office funded van coming out of the city into areas such as Kimberley or Nuttall, which aren't covered by any of the CCTV networks, but would benefit from having the attention of that van put on them sometime?
I think it's a question we can ask, and I think that there are other CCTV vans, by the way, so we might be able to sort it out. What I'll do is I'll speak to the local area inspector, see if he's got a plan and what that plan might entail, and if there's going to be use of CCTV, which I suspect he's probably thought about it. All right. Sorry, apologise.
Yeah, no, she had put in some kind of resources. There's been dispersal orders in Kimberley.
Yeah.
But some of these problems are
Okay.
Identifying and data useful.
I'm sure something could be sorted.
Okay. And I've got a question on behalf of Mayor Abrahams. Okay. Firstly, thank you. Picking up on the narrative, keen to check. Is there a communication strategy to public on HMIC feedback?
The answer to that would be no, there isn't. No, we haven't gone out there and told them about HMIC in the stages that we've been through. There will be. There will be.
Yeah.
That way.
There was certainly a lot of communications, wasn't there, at the beginning? So
well, I think what we can't underestimate with HMIC is the effect that has on public confidence. And as much as we're going through it and we're sort of heads down, sort of scurrying away, trying to get things sorted out, the public need to understand what that process is and how we're going to get through that process to the other side. So I think your point is more than valid to make that point and to get the public to understand where we're at and the journey we've travelled so far.
And a question for Mayor Abrahams. It's about the immediate justice pilot and explains that it's been extended for 4 months. But is there any way that could be actually brought into the VRP funding pilots that are ongoing?
Yeah, not at this point, no. It would have to be a separately funded option, which we are looking at, and I'm very keen to keep it. The Chief's very keen to keep it, and I think we'll try and find a way.
Thank you. I think, did you want to come in on something specific, Councillor?
Yeah,
I've got Councillor Inglis waiting as well. Can I take Councillor Inglis first and then I'll come to you?
Okay. Yeah, we're sort of looking at the Safe Streets funding. We know that's going to end May. So it's going to be a successor to that. You know, we've known the success of what we've had before. You know, what we've had in Russia has been really good. You know, we've had the funding for the Central Avenue, you know, the shop watch and CCTV, radios and everything. It's been a great success, which has obviously contributed to your excellent figures for retail crime, of course. So it's really, you know, is that forthcoming again? It was a bit vague last time as to what was available. Something that we all support. It's been really good for communities. You know, identify those hotspots, funding it to get those results. Those results have been positive.
If I may take that, Councillor Inglis. So I think we've talked before here around the prioritisation exercise that was being done in relation to those aspects of government funding that were ending. We knew they were coming. And so we've been in dialogue with partners, and a number of partners through November to January in relation to extending the approaches and learning the lessons of what was good, etc. So the Commissioner now has signed off a pot of funding, which we've labelled situational crime prevention, which will be targeted at those areas that are profiled to be causing the issues, using the Safer Streets type approach, and programme managed within the office, liaising closely with local authority partners and really targeting activity around what works. So some funding has been earmarked in relation to that. But obviously, bearing in mind the government funding has stopped, so the Commissioner can it's best to see that approach continue, but in a targeted fashion.
Is that for an area to apply for, or is that directed to those figures that you've got?
So some proportions have been earmarked for each of the community safety partnerships to work with us in relation to targeting those particular areas.
I'm painfully aware of the fact that some of this funding is ending, and we've got kind of quite good setups now in terms of the investment that we've made, and it's important that we kind of back that up, I think, to keep work going as best as we can.
I know from officers, if there's an application, it could be simplified, because it was laborious last time from all.
Cross over those.
And we've listened to partner feedback as well about 1 year funding isn't helpful when you're only trying to plan ahead in relation to activity. So the Commissioner has signed off a 2-year settlement in relation to that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Wilmot, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for a very informative report that you did. And thank you for the money you sent to Ashfield for the CCTV system. Unfortunately, as you're probably aware, we had 4 vandalised beyond all repair in both Kirkby and Humphrey. And I don't know how we're going to fund that. So if you do have any possible resources left, it'd be very much obliged.
Catch him on camera.
On?
You not catch him on camera.
They've got hoods and so unfortunately. Anyway, yeah, one of our, say, problem areas is there wouldn't be any chance of getting that CTV van or one of the vans that you've got out in our areas to alleviate that problem until we discuss how we put the cameras back in there, and as I say, in the neighbourhood policing policy, in retail crime, that has been unfortunately increased just lately. And I just went into one of our premises, which was a big retailer, and they reported it to the police, and there's been no one, come in and have a word with them, etc. I've been in, so I've tried to give them some reassurance that we will be looking at the situation. But I did think that the police do normally go into where, because this person was assaulted by a number of youths, so I thought they would have gone in, but they haven't. And it's one of our high street retailers. Can I say, also, you were talking about the farmers' situation, and I've just been on the radio that now the farmers have got a great chance of making more resources because oats are now being made into milk. And the amount of money they get from oats is with, I think it's £130 a tonne, something like that. Will shoot up tremendously because mainly the farmers have gone on to rape because they can get more money from that. But anyway, that's incidental. Can I also say that that Safer Streets has been a very successful in my area anyway, and it's finishing. What's going to replace it, or is there anything that can replace it? Because it's essential that something of that area, we do get some help in that. You say that you have a lot of. When you take in social behaviour, you get a lot of reports in. I just wondered, you got it from a lot of groups. So, but how many referrals do you get from the general public? It'd be good to know, how many you actually get from them. I think that's all I've done.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, do
you want to go back?
Quickly, I'll just answer. So in terms of Safer Streets is ending, and the same as just been said to Councillor Rob Inglis, that money will be given out to the CSPs who can decide then where the money needs to be spent from a smaller budget that I've now organised to try and mitigate some of the drop-off from Safer Streets. It's obviously not going to be as much as Safer Streets was, but there will be some money there to help support some of the work. CCTV van, again, we can put in a request. Do you converse with your local area inspector?
I'm meeting tomorrow, actually.
There you go. So
only because I've insisted on it.
yeah, no, and rightly so. And I think that because a lot of the things that you're asking me, I would say would sit with that person, because they will have plans in place. And it's important that you know and understand the plans, and you don't think that your communities are just being left. So I think that meeting is going to be most valuable, and will be able to answer the majority of what you've asked. In terms of local issues and how they're going to actually deal with those. Because a lot of that is linking very much into the operational side, which I don't have sight of. That's down to the chief. Okay.
Just one final question. About the shoplifting, fly tipping, parking obstruction, nuisance, speeding, drug use, burglary, neighbourhood issues. I just wondered where we are on that situation, because many of them, I do ask the police, because I do a lot of surgeries with the police, and they say, oh, it's not our area, it's done by somebody else, and this, that, the other. I just wondered if we can start working together with the county, because a lot of the issues are county, but it's no good just saying to me that, oh, it's just so-and-so's problem. It's not, it's everybody's problem. You know, I just wondered if we could get together on these low crime issues, because what happens if a person gets away with low crime? He moves on to something bigger, and it's essential we stamp out this low level crime epidemic at the present time.
As I say, the meeting tomorrow, I think, will be quite fruitful for you, because you'll get to understand what they're doing and what they're thinking, and you'll be able to add to that. Okay.
Got two more.
Okay.
Councillor Ellis first, and then Councillor in Trainer.
Thank you. On page 45, you talk about the right care, right person.
Yes.
I know we've heard as a panel that mental health drives so many services. Police have tended not to be able to get away from it.
Yeah.
If all else fails, call the police.
Police, yeah.
But we were concerned when this first came out that it was a particular force that was trying to get away from dealing with mental health. I mean, can you tell us, now we've been going for a year, can you tell us a bit more about how far involved Nottinghamshire Police are with mental health? Have we still got the triage vehicle and things like that?
Yes, we still have a triage vehicle. And in terms of mental health, you're aware it's one of the biggest concerns that we've got. And the police were getting sucked into a lot of mental health call outs. However, the way that I think that it's starting to pan out now with right care, right place, right person, is that there is pushback. However, what I want to reassure everybody for is, if that's not possible, the police will attend. They are going to attend as a backstop for all eventualities. The efficiency of it, I'm not quite sure where they are with right care, right person in terms of the efficiencies of it and how much it's being used as a resource, and actually filtering out so that other resources can go there. But it's something I can find out for you, and give you an update if you would like that.
Thank you. Councillor Introver, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just a very swift one, if I may. Page 68. Report. There's just talk there about confidence. I remember us talking just over a year ago to the Chief Constable and saying, if there's one thing that you want to achieve after year one, what would it be? And it was an improvement in police confidence, public confidence. And we're not there yet. I'm not labour that point, that being an organisation that made a significant cultural change, and 1 year isn't a long time to achieve significant cultural change in any organisation. But that said, one comment I've had from some of the rural colleagues, and I will quote, there are some concerns that engagement with community leaders has reduced, and this might be a factor in impacting some of the confidence, particularly the more rural areas and the more remote areas of Bassettville and Sherwood. And I just wanted to share that. It's not meant to be anything other than a sharing of information and some feedback that I've had from some of the county councillor colleagues, and that's across groups as well. It's not just from.
Can I just come back to you?
Can I just intervene for a second?
Sorry, yeah.
Be processing irritation, I know, but that actually is on the next paper, I think.
Oh, this.
Councillor Introner, but not to worry, we can come back to it. I just want to.
Very quickly.
Okay.
Very
I wanted to close this particular paper down.
Yeah. I was going to ask Councillor Introner, do you know your local area inspector?
Local area inspector, I have communicated with recently, but previous to that, as you know, the previous local area divisional commander had been off work for
Went off, so
quite some time. So
yeah. Well, no, well, the only reason I'm asking is because it might be worth having a conversation with them to find out which officers are involved, so that they'll have officers in their team that are trained in rural crime and how they can better connect with some of our rural communities to see and relay some of those concerns, I think.
No problem.
To help the confidence issue.
Similarly, it was only recently I found out that ACC Hooks was not
right.
So it's enable policing. Madam Chairman, I do apologise. I jumped ahead of myself.
You did indeed. I'll forgive you on this occasion.
Please forgive me.
Otherwise, it upsets all my rhythm.
I don't want to do that.
I just want to check. I know Councillor Inglis put his hand up for another question. Are you still on paper 6, or have you moved like Councillor Introner onto the next paper?
I'll start 5.7 actually.
Oh, right. Well, then you can ask your question.
Yeah, page 54. Talk about the crime and policing bill that's come in. Just a question really, and a commitment from me if possible. I took a motion to our full council back in December in regards to car cruising, to enhance powers for police officers to do things more robustly. We did have a response back from Diana Johnson, Minister of State Policing, who suggested in regards to the ASB and respect orders, looking at some forces to be pilots. Something I wrote with Chief Inspector Risk Khan last week, which he took to Superintendent Pearson. What I'm saying is if that's to go ahead and force, please we support it.
Yes.
We do move ahead. We're pioneering force in the country for it.
As it stands at the moment, I support most pilots for this force because it helps with the confidence that we're actually doing some good stuff. We need to get it out there. So
enhance the operation also. That's your assurance.
Thank you. Thank you. Before moving to the final or penultimate paper, we're still on item 5, and I just wanted to ask you, Commissioner, to thank you for giving an update on where you are on Operation Catalyst. I'm mindful that the Chief Constable isn't here, otherwise it would have been nice to say we're delighted to see that we're on the right road. So perhaps on our behalf you could pass that message on, and we're really pleased to see that things appear to be going the way that you like to see it eventually. So we wanted to record that. If we can move to paper number 6, which is this update. I think Dan often usually gives us a little bit of help here, and keeping an eye on time. Over to you. Thank you, Dan.
So so moving on to report 6. So this is the first sort of full overview of the new policing crime plan performance framework, which includes the final set of key performance indicators, 12 of them. So in summary, 11 of the KPIs are either on track or within 5% of the current performance ambition. So it's a relatively positive picture. And unfortunately, it's the elements of public perception that are lagging behind in terms of the PCC's ambition. Positively, you'll see we're seeing strong reductions in crime, so victim-based crime down 6%. We're seeing some of the strongest positive outcome rates for crime in the country, some of the strongest levels of 999 call answering. We've seen a really strong improving picture in terms of the quality of investigations. But most importantly, where victims are reporting crimes to the police or crimes or incidents, we've seen a really marked increase in satisfaction amongst those individuals over the last year. So 5.4% increase in satisfaction amongst those that had contact with the police. And we know from Force's Catalyst improvement plan and the feedback that we've received from HMIC so far that there are some really sort of tangible actions that have been taken that have driven some of these improvements. But sadly, it is yet to be reflected in the general public perception really of the police, despite some of the the excellent sort of neighbourhood level problem solving that we've seen evidence of in the previous paper. What I will say on in terms of those public perception measures, they are universal measures of trust and confidence. So we go out to all members of the public. Only 22% of those that we survey will have had contact with the police in the last 12 months. So we're really relying on media, comms, word of mouth in terms of really kind of impacting on that level of public perception, which will always be heavily influenced by national events and both local and national media reporting, obviously. So the challenge for us at the moment really is sort of teasing out what impact we're having locally versus kind of the national picture, and we're comparing some of the trends that we're seeing in public trust and confidence to sort of the national crime survey for England and Wales. We're reaching out to other OPCC areas to look at where they're monitoring trust and confidence, bearing in mind that there's no national standardised measure, so that everyone's doing it in different ways. But we're doing a bit of comparative analysis, really, just to look at how that impact varies locally. But what you will see from the performance paper, a really interesting anomaly in Gedling. Gedling's the area that's bucking the trend in terms of trust and confidence. We're seeing almost a 3% increase in confidence. And we've been trying to sort of unpick the rationale for that, and it's been largely driven by improvements in perceptions that the police are effective at catching criminals, investigating crime and catching criminals, and are visible in the areas of greatest need. And it's interesting to note that is the area that the majority of the immediate justice activity has been taking place, in terms of almost 90% of the graffiti clear-ups, 66% of cycling clear-ups. So although we can't really evidence a strong causal relationship there, it's just an interesting anomaly to note that we're going to keep tracking. The other thing that I'll draw your attention to is the grade 1 response incidents. So incidents that are attended within the target time for grade 1, and that's attended within 15 minutes in urban areas, 20 minutes in rural areas. The PCC has an ambition to increase attendance within target time by around 5%, and we're still sort of plateauing, so we're falling below the ambition there. We know that there are pressures on response at the moment, and there are also a number of data quality issues that we're looking to address in terms of just making sure that we're capturing attendance at the right time, as opposed to when forensics or specialist officers attend at a later date. There's some indication that there are some inaccurate data that we're looking to resolve and get clarity on. Probably the other point that I would note is the increase in speeding as an issue of local concern. So we ask communities what issues they'd like to see the police and local authorities do more to tackle in their area. The proportion of residents citing speeding has reached the highest level in over 3 years. About 36% of residents stating that's an area of concern. And this is something that we're very much alive to. We're looking at opportunities to address through the community grants process and through our engagement with the Nottinghamshire Safer Roads Partnership, which has been recently reinvigorated. So that's it in terms of kind of the overall headline measures. I don't know if you want me to pick up on the point of clarity around reoffending rates, if that's okay to cover now.
Now or just make a note for the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I can just in terms of clarity. So we're looking at binary and frequency reoffending rates are listed in the performance paper. So the binary offending is the number of offenders that have committed a subsequent offence in the next 12 months. So it's very much you're either a repeat offender or you're not. The frequency looks at the number of offences that have been committed by those that are reoffending. So it's a measure of the volume. Yeah. So where you'll see in the city, we've seen a reduction in the number of repeat offenders, but an increase in offences per offender. So we're dealing with a much smaller cohort of complex individuals, really more complex repeat offenders ultimately. One thing that we don't tease out here is the severity of reoffending, which there's another dimension to it. So it's all moved from burglary to level shot theft, for example, or from serious violence through to violence without injury. But
that's great. Thank you. It's the first one that was confusing the most.
Yeah, I'll make sure it's clearly articulated in the report as well, because in terms of
a couple of comments that were made to me by people who've now left, so we'll pass them on. Page 67. This is the issue about one of the strongest 999 call answering and so on and so forth. The comment was made was that whilst this is exemplary in the way it's presented, perhaps it also might be helpful to show the number of people that aren't answered. Because actually, if you give a raw figure, it gives a slightly different perspective of that report. So that was one aspect. And the other that was mentioned to me, and you've just mentioned about speeding. Is there also a statistic you collected about the kind of a level of aggression that also takes place with motoring and motoring offences? Because that's been mentioned to me 2 or 3 times, not just today, but certainly for mentioning when the next meeting.
Sure. So in terms of the first point, so the abandonment rates for 909 and 101 call answering are extremely low. So 0.4% abandonment rate for 999. We can include the volume of calls, but it's a very.
I think that would help some people understand it a little more.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. In terms of aggression on the roads, that's not a statistic that we easily have access to, but it's something that we could quite easily look into in terms of analysing sort of the location of violence without injury offences ultimately, and aggression. There are ways in which we could kind of unpick that and understand it a little bit better, but it's not something that we could have easily to hand.
Well, it's up to the Commissioner.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if that comes under dangerous driving.
Yeah, that was my first reaction when people mentioned it.
I bet Councillor Rob Inglis might know.
Yeah.
Ex-traffic cop.
Yeah.
But so I think that it's an interesting question because yes, I think
it may be.
We can ask that question.
Yeah.
Find out.
And I think it's probably something that maybe I say this, females feel perhaps more than males, so there would be some subsets there. Are there any other questions on? Yes, Councillor Wilmot.
Yeah, just say confidence in the police is always going to be an issue until we find a way of letting the residents know what's going on. There are issues. The normal situation is that residents come to me because I do about in a 12 months, about 89 meetings with the community. That was the last one. And many of them say this, that, the other. Oh, there's never a policeman to see this, that. Perception is still very high, and there's got to be a way of attacking that. Whether it be through an A4 every 6 months from the police to say this is what's happening, and this is what we're attacking, this is how well we've done, and so forth. And you could do that. I know you might say it's costly, but you could send it out with the council tax to start with, and send it to the councils, and it's free of charge.
I do a newsletter.
Yeah.
Do you have access to the newsletter?
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is it's perception's still there that you're doing nothing. And I work continually, as you know, with the police, and we are doing things.
Yeah.
So just getting that. How do we get that message out to the community? That we are doing this, that, the other, and so forth. Very difficult.
Okay.
On the speeding, it's really getting bad in my area. It says they're up by 8.8%. And of course, it's the pensioners when they're out there. They see this action when they're going across zebra crossings and suddenly have to pull back because the car's shot through at 45, 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
How do we control that? I don't know, because you've got boy races coming off the M1 motorway, as you know. Not regularly now at the moment, but it's still happening. Because only about 3 days ago, somebody reported that they saw 3 cars abreast of each other on Annesley Road, the main road going up to the M1. And I don't know how you actually combat it, because there's so much going on.
Yeah, I think it's becoming part of the antisocial behaviour package, really. Some of the driving that's happening. Just so you know that I'm obviously looking at safer roads and making sure as well, or trying to make sure that it's owned by the locality, so the individuals who are there own it, and go out, and the police support that. So I'm just about to set one up in Bassetlaw, funnily enough, a Safer Roads campaign, and we've got all of the equipment. We're just sorting it all out now, and they'll be out there hopefully in Bassetlaw looking at that area as well. So happy to come to your area, have a conversation, and see if there are people there who would like to partake in it, and get them set up on the Safer Roads.
And of course, the final point is that the e-scooters situation, it's escalating because they're so easy to buy, and then you can buy a machine that actually gets it up to 50 miles an hour. I saw one a few days ago. I rang it through, but it was pointless because they're young.
I think what we need to do with regard to e-scooters is really get out there what the legislation says, and all e-scooters are basically illegal. Because if they are on a road, you have to have insurance, MOT, and tax.
Absolutely.
And none of them have that.
None of them.
Therefore, if they're on a road, it's illegal. So that's kind of where it's at. The government have just changed policy, and rather than having to give them a warning, as of next year when it becomes into legislation, hopefully, we can just take the e-scooter straight off them. There's no conversation.
I look forward to that.
So they've changed it so that we can start doing that. So it is a challenge. It's a real challenge. But again, it's probably bigger than the individual on the e-scooter, isn't it? That's to,
But the police tell me that they really haven't got the resources.
It's different
to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Last question from Councillor Waddings. Thank you.
Yeah, just, my comment is, I think actually you've set yourself a really challenging set of KPIs, because perception that the police are visible in areas of greatest need. I don't know how a member of the public knows where the areas of greatest need are, because the perception of our response as a council to, say, for example, tarmacking a road, because highways have told us it's one of the worst roads in the city, just prompts a lot of comments from people saying, well, what about my road? What about my road? So I think that's a really challenging target that you've set yourself there to meet. I just wondered, is it possible to have a bit more information about the 101 abandoned call rate? I did have to ring it this Tuesday morning, and I got disconnected 3 times before I actually got through, but there was no announcement that cut in to say, it's busy, can you call back at another time? And sometimes there's lots of diversionary messages on lines to say, if you can't get through, you can do this. If you can't get through, you can do that. So I just wanted a bit more information about that, albeit it's really good to see the 999 performance improving. And then on speeding, it's not just an issue with illegal scooters. It's illegal motorbikes, illegal quad bikes, and as you say, these altered scooters, which are going up to really, really high levels of speeds, and e-bikes where people don't have to pedal them as well. And I think it's an incredibly difficult thing, because how on earth do the police intercept those individuals who, I know on a nice sunny Sunday, there'll be teams of young people riding around in a big circuit on quad bikes and illegal motorbikes. And so I do, I wonder if there's a different, is anybody doing a really good job about how you actually intercept that sort of crime in order to be able to seize the equipment? Because you're quite right to say if they're on a road or a public place, and that could include a car park as well. So if they're being ridden on a car park, that's a public place, potentially. Some car parks are private. But I do wonder if there's more could be done with the CCTV network in order to track people back to their property, in order to seize the bike, whatever, but they have no markings on them. But that is a regular complaint that comes forward from residents. And obviously we try to explain to them how hard it is for the police to intercept. And the police response is get people to report it, because if they report it, we can deploy our, they've got a very small motorbike team to the right day and place. But the truth of the matter is that having to consistently report stuff is also difficult as well. And so I just wonder, some stage we'll come up with another way to actually address that sort of thing. But I think you're quite right to say widespread lack of understanding that e-scooters are actually, all of them are illegal unless they're in a regulated scheme, renting, the rental schemes.
So we'll wait to hear.
Yes, we'll wait to hear.
Final, councillor.
As quickly as I can. On the e-bike stuff, around pedestrian areas in towns, it's becoming more and more a concern for residents. And I think this is where we come back a little bit to visibility. Speeding, again, public perception. We've got the A46 roadworks in here. We've just moved into contraflow, so in that contraflow it's 30 mile an hour rather than the 40. And we've got a speed camera van that people will perceive as just there for easy pickings from people coming off the 70 mile an hour section into that, and they've not slowed down in time. They may be driving at 40 mile an hour, they may be driving at 45, 50 as they enter in. But people just look at that and think, why aren't you outside my school? Why aren't you or wherever? The data's great. I'm just coming back to public confidence. We can have all the data we want. We live in a world where, as organisations, we have to have this quantitative data, KPIs, key milestones, critical path analysis of one thing or another. But the qualitative element, which feeds into public confidence, in my opinion, will always come back to residents want to see some police on the streets and yellow jackets. And I think, as I said, and you alluded to it, Gary, at the last meeting, you understand that. I don't doubt that. So I don't think it takes a lot in terms of us to do that, which just leads me into my question, which is when are the additional police going to feed into the numbers which are still relatively static? That was a question from some of my colleagues.
Well, the government are currently looking at that package in terms of 13,000 and how that's going to manifest itself on a local level. So I would like to think that perhaps in the next time we come to the next meeting, we might have some idea of what that really looks like and what that's going to equate to for Nottinghamshire. We have what, sorry?
We talked about another 50 officers or whatever it was for Nottinghamshire.
I've not said a figure. I don't know what that figure is, but hopefully we'll come to you and give you a figure of what that really looks like. All right.
Just a little point, just to finish on, we're talking about electric bikes, scooters. I had a double take the other day, I had to go around the block to have a double look. There's a woman, she must be 85 on this electric scooter.
Oh, something to
that body on either.
She's speaking.
That takes us to item 7, the last paper on the agenda. Over to my learned colleague.
Right. Just very, very briefly, just to say, in terms of our next meeting, it's quite a full agenda, as is the first meeting of the municipal year. There is an error in that we've got Commissioner's annual update on force complaints appearing in June. It does also appear in November, where it should be, but it shouldn't be on the list there. Obviously, with elections and the start of a new municipal year, there will be a fuller work programme available, and as always, it is a live document which is subject to change and organic routes as we go through the business being transacted.
Thank you very much, everyone. I duly declare the meeting closed at 4:05.
Lovely. Thank you.